Hello, everybody. I'm Naya, an MBA student from the Graduate School of Wesleyan University, Philippines, and I'm here to give you a crash course on financial management. Life's a series of choices, isn't it? Whether we're weighing investment strategies, career moves, or even weekend hobbies, we're all in the business of evaluation, striving to identify the paths that promise the greatest return, be it in wealth, personal fulfillment, or something in between. The quest for value mirrors the essence of capital budgeting, which is the discipline of assessing potential investments to ultimately maximize shareholder wealth. By definition, capital budgeting is the process of planning expenditures whose returns are expected to extend beyond 1 year. There are four main techniques into capital budgeting, and these are the payback period, net present value, internal rate of return, and profitability index. The first part of my discussion is the simplest additive method for assessing the worth of a project, which is the payback period. The payback period is the number of years it takes for a project's cash inflows to recover the initial investment. Its calculation is simple, especially for even cash flows. We only need to divide the initial investment by the annual cash flow. However, for uneven cash flows, just like what we see here on our screen, the calculation may be a bit long, but is still simple and easy. To get the fraction of the payback period, we first need to list the cash flow per year in one column and the cumulative inflows in another column. Then, let's take a look at the cumulative inflows column and note the last year for which the cumulative total does not exceed the initial investment of 100,000. In our example in the screen, it's for the year 2 with 73,962. Next, we take the initial outlay, which is the 100,000, and minus it from the value we've derived from step 2, which is 73,962. Then divide it by the following year's cash inflow, and that is 39,359. We then get 0.66, which is the fraction of the payback period. However, we still need to get the payback period in years. And to do that, we need to take the whole figure determined in step 2, which is also year 2, and add it to the fraction of a year determined in step 3, which is the 0.66. Thus, our payback period is 2 plus 0.66 or 2.66 years. As a rule, we accept projects with a payback period shorter than a predetermined cutoff period. As you now have seen, computing the payback period is easy and simple. Because of this, it's a good tool in providing a quick measure of liquidity. However, the main cons of using the payback period is that it ignores the time value of money, which means that the payback period fails to account for the fact that the money today is worth more than the money in the future. So great. Now that we know the payback period, we also need to understand the discounted methods of cash flow budgeting because, again, we wanted to take account for the time value of money. At this point, we will now move on into the discounted cash flows, and we have three methods for it: the internal rate of return, the net present value, and the profitability index. These three models capture differences in the timing of cash flows for various projects through the discounting process. Don't get overwhelmed yet. Discounting just simply means it's a way to adjust the future money worth to the current worth today. In simpler terms, imagine you have two friends. Friend A who promised to give you 1,000 pesos in 1 year. And another friend, friend B, who promised to give you 1,000 pesos in 5 years. Even though it's this same amount of money, you'd still prefer to get it from friend A than friend B. So, discounted cash flow methods are like a way to calculate how much less valuable friend B's promise is because it's further in the future. The first method in the discounted cash flows are or is the internal rate of return. It is the discount rate that equates the present value of the future net cash flows from an investment project with the project's initial cash outflow. Let me explain this in the equation in our screen. ICO stands for the initial cash outflow, and it is the amount of money that you invest at the beginning of the project at time zero. It simply refers to the cost of the project. CF, or cash flows, on the other hand, are the net cash inflows you expect to receive from the project in the future. Thus, our initial equation composes of ICO equals to the summation of the value after dividing cash flows by 1 plus the internal rate of return for year 1 up until year 4. So the years 1, 2, 3, and 4, represented in the exponents, is the year in which the cash flow is received. So CF divided by 1 plus the internal rate of return raised to 1 just simply represent the present value of the cash flow received in year 1. CF divided by 1 plus the internal rate of return raised to 2 is the present value of the cash flow received in year 2. And the same goes for the other years of receiving the cash flow. Now, let's take a look at the second equation where we replace the values of the first equation with the values in our previous example. So we will now notice that even if we replace the cash flow values, the internal rate of return is unknown. Again, this is the variable we're trying to find because it's the discount rate that makes the equation balance. This is the first part of using a process called interpolation. This process involves solving for the internal rate of return through a trial and error method using present value tables. In real life, there are computer programs and program calculators for solving for the internal rate of return. However, for the context of our discussion, I'll also share what the trial and error looks like. Let's take a look at the first table on our screen. Suppose that we start at a 15% and 20% discount rates and calculate the present value of the cash flow stream. The reference book I used included a table for the present value interest factors, but alternatively, we could make repeated use of the equation, which is present value interest factor at interest rate for n period is 1 divided by 1 plus interest rate raised to n, or the time. In the example, we will observe that the total of the present values, if we use 15,000 as a discount rate, amounted to 104,168.01, which is greater than the original cash outflow of 100,000. Meanwhile, on the second table, you'll see that if we use 20% as the discount rate, we get a total of 94,434 as a total of net present value. Still a little short of the 100,000 original cash outflow. However, like I said, the internal rate of return has to discount the present value of the expected net cash flow so that it will be equal to our initial cash outflow of 100,000. This is where the actual interpolation comes in. It's about estimating an unknown number that lies somewhere between two known numbers that we now know, which is 104,168.01 and 94,434.10. To approximate the actual rate, we interpolate between 15 and 20% as follows. First, we list the interest rate and the present value we have computed. So we know that at 15%, the total present value is 104,168.01. At 20%, it's 94,434.10. We now are aware that the IRR that makes the equation equal to 100,000 is still unknown. And somewhere in between of these given numbers is our internal rate of return. The next step is getting the differences between the values that we have at hand. So the main difference between 104,000 and 168.01 and 94,434.10 is at 9,733.91. We also can get the difference between 104,000 and 168.01 and our initial cash outflow, which is 100,000, and their total difference is 4,168.01. On the other hand, we also know the difference in the discount rates. Between the 15% and 20% discount, it's 0.05. And since we're looking for IRR, so 0.15 and its difference with the internal rate of return will be represented as X. So with these differences that we have, we can now list down that X is divided by 0.05 and is equal to 4,168.01 divided by 9,733.91. Once that we rearrange the equation, X would actually be 0.05 times 4,168.01 divided by 9,733.91. Then we get 0.0214. However, we don't stop there. Now we understand that X, or the difference between 0.15 and IRR, is 0.0214. Now the remaining activity to do is for us to add this value to our initial discount rate, which is 0.15. And 0.15 plus 0.0214 is 0.1714, or can be expressed as well as 17.14%. We now know that the discount rate of 17.14% equates the present value of the future net cash flows from an investment project with the project's initial cash outflow. As a rule, the acceptance criterion generally employed with the internal rate of return method is to compare the internal rate of return to a required rate of return known as a cutoff or hurdle rate. The pros of using the IRR is that it's intuitive and easy to understand as a rate of return, and at the same time, when the calculated IRR excess or goes over the hurdle rate, it should result to a higher price of the stock. A project with an IRR exceeding the hurdle rate indicates that it's expected to generate returns greater than the company's cost of capital. This then translates to a higher expected future cash flows for the company. And lastly, it accounts for the time value of money. The next method that we have for cash budgeting is the net present value. The net present value is the sum of the present values of all cash inflows and outflows of a project. It tells us the project's net contribution to the shareholder wealth. Its formula is represented by the summation of the cash flow received at a time divided by 1 plus the discount rate raised by the time minus the initial investment. So once again, CF is the cash flow at the time T, R is the discount rate or cost of capital required of or required rate of return, and T is the time period. To understand it, we can substitute the cash flows in our previous example. 34,432 for year 1, 39,530 for year 2, 39,359 for year 3, and 32,219 for year 4. If the discount rate or cost of capital or required rate of return is 0.12, then the net present value is calculated as 10,768, which is a positive value. A positive NPV would mean that the project is acceptable. We accept projects with a positive NPV as they add value, and we reject those with negative NPV because they don't add value. The main advantage of using NPV is that it directly measures the increase in firm value. It also accounts for the time value of money and uses all relevant cash flows over the project's life. It also is consistent with the goal of maximizing shareholder wealth. Its main considerations would be to require an accurate forecast of future cash flows and the discount rate, which can be challenging. And it may also be difficult to compare projects of different sizes or scales using the net present value. The last and final discounted method to capital budgeting is using profitability index. It is the ratio of the present value of a project's future net cash inflows to the project's initial cash outflow. If we remember in the net present value, we've subtracted the initial cash outflow value, but in NPV, we use it to divide it. The equation is straightforward, as you can see on our screen. And as a rule of thumb, as long as the profitability index is 1.00 or greater, the investment proposal is acceptable. For any given project, the net present value and the profitability index methods give the same accept reject signals. The net present value method, however, is often preferred over the profitability index. And the reason for this is because the net present value tells us whether to accept a project or not, and also expresses the absolute dollar economic contribution that the project makes to shareholder wealth. At this point, we now know the four capital budgeting techniques, their pros and cons, and when the best to use them. However, an equally important concept that we need to understand is capital rationing. Capital rationing is defined as a situation when a firm has a limited amount of funds to invest, forcing it to choose among profitable projects. Some of the reasons for capital rationing are limited access to capital markets, or management constraints, or reluctance to issue new equity. It is also important to note that there's a difference between soft rationing and hard rationing. Soft rationing is imposed by management, while hard rationing is imposed by external factors such as inflation or changes in interest rates and many more. A question that you might have is how investments are appraised under capital rationing. With a capital rationing constraint, the firm attempts to select the combination of investment proposals that will provide the greatest increase in the value of the firm, subject to not exceeding the budget ceiling constraint. If a capital is to be rationed for only the current period, the main goal is selecting those combination of projects that add the greatest increment in value per dollar of investment without surpassing the budget ceiling. To understand capital rationing, let's take a look at the example in our screen. Let's assume that a budget ceiling for an initial cash outflow during the present value is $65,000. We have eight proposals that are independent of each other, and our goal is to select the combination of proposals that provides the greatest increase in the firm value that is 65,000 or less can provide. Selecting projects in descending order of profitability, according to the various discounted cash flow methods until the $65,000 budget is exhausted reveals the following. In terms of the internal rate of return, it's a combination of project F, C, and D. The initial cash outflows is at 65,000 and their projected net present value is 54,000. If we take a look at the combination of project C and B, the initial cash outflow is also 65,000. Their NPV is 57,000, which is greater than the FCD combination. And whereas if we take a look at the combination of the projects C, G, F, and E, not only that their net present value provides the greatest, which is 76,000, but their profitability index are also high and their initial outflow is within the budget. With capital rationing, we can only accept projects such as C, E, F, and G based on our computation a while ago because totaling they have $65,000 in the initial outflows. No other mix of available projects will provide a greater total net present value than the 76,000 that these four projects will provide in combination. Because of the budget constraints, we cannot necessarily invest in all proposals that increase the net present value of the firm. Instead, we invest in the acceptable proposal only if the budget constraint allows such investment. Selecting projects by descending order of profitability index or the ratio of the present value of future net cash flows over the initial cash outflow allows us to select the mix of projects that adds the most value to the firm when operating under a single period budget ceiling. Great job! At this point, you now know the methods of capital budgeting and the concept of capital rationing. To apply what we have learned, let's take a look at the case study of Acme Plumbing Company. The Acme Blivet Company is a small business owner deciding to sell new things. In our screen, you'll see that they have three ideas. First is to produce a new line of aluminum blivet, which is a brand new product line. The second idea is to expand its existing blivet line to include several new sizes. And third is to develop a new, higher quality line of blivet, which is a premium version of their existing ones. Based on the data that we have on the screen, we know how much each idea or project will cost the company in the investment required column. And we also know the present value of the future cash flows that each of these projects will make. For the first project, the initial investment required is 200,000 and it will make the firm 290,000. For project 2, the investment required is 115,000 and it will make the firm 185,000. And for project 3, it will require an investment of 270,000 and will make the firm a whopping 400,000. However, there is a catch. Sometimes doing two projects together can save them money or make them money. Here in our screen, there are lists of considerations that Acme Blivet Company has to consider. First, if they undertake project 1 and 2, there will be no economies because the investment required and present values will simply be the sum of the parts. With projects 1 and 3, economies are possible in investment because one of the machines acquired can be used in both production process. The total investment for projects 1 and 3 combined is 440,000. If projects 2 and 3 are undertaken, there are no economies to be achieved in marketing and producing the products, but not in investment. The expected present value of future cash flows for project 2 and 3 combined is 620,000. If all three projects are undertaken simultaneously, the economies noted above will still hold. However, a 125,000 extension of the plant will be necessary as a space is not available for all three projects. The question is, which project or combination of projects do you think should Acme Blivet Company choose to make the most money? This is where we will put into use the capital budgeting techniques that we have learned so far. Let's start off with the profitability index. The key to choosing the best option lies in maximizing the net present value created for the company. And while the profitability index is useful for ranking, NPV gives the absolute dollar amount of value added. So, in terms of computing the profitability index, we now know that for project 1, its profitability index is only 1.45. For project 2, its profitability index is 1.61. For project 3, profitability index is 1.48. For the combination of project 1 and 2, it's 1.51. For the combination of project 1 and 3, it's 1.57. For the combination of project 2 and 3, it's 1.61. And for the combination of all three projects, it's 1.99. It's worth noting the top 4 projects or project combinations that has the highest profitability index, as we will use it in the computation of our net present value. Here we see that for project 2, which is an individual project, the net present value, which is 70,000, is computed by divide subtracting 185,000 by 115,000, which is the cost of the investment. For the combination of project 1 and 3, their combined present value is 690,000, which is given, while their combined investment is 440,000. So if we subtract it, we get 250,000 as a net present value. For project 2 and 3 combined, their present value is 620,000 less the combined investment required, which is 385,000, and we would get the net present value of 235,000. And of course, for projects 1, 2, and 3 combined, so their present value is 620 for all three, and their combined investment is requiring 710,000. And that would leave us with 165,000 as a net present value. As you now see, the combined NPV of project 1 and 3 generates the highest NPV among all combinations that were presented within the case study. This means that this combination will add the most value to the company. While the other combinations have high profitability index, the overall goal is to maximize the amount of money that the company gains. The savings gained by combining the machines in projects 1 and 3 are what makes this combination the most profitable. It directly measures the increase in shareholder wealth as well. The Acme Blivet company chooses the combination of projects 1 and 3 because it offers the highest net increase in value, which is 250,000, which directly translate to increase in the company's worth. Again, the key to choosing the best option lies in maximizing the net present value created by a project for a company. While the profitability index is useful for ranking, the NPV once again gives the absolute dollar value added. As a recommendation, the Acme Blivet company should choose a combination of project 1 and 3 because it offers the highest net increase in value, which is 250,000. Economies are achieved in this because they can expand its existing Blivet line to include several new sizes and develop new and higher quality line of Blivet using the same machines that they have. This directly translates to an increase in the company's worth. As a key takeaway, profitability index and net present value can sometimes lead to different project rankings, and the choice of metric depends on the company's specific goals and constraints. When capital is not severely limited, NPV is generally preferred because it directly measures the increase in shareholder wealth. And when a capital is severely constrained, profitability index is recommended to be used. And with that, congratulations! You've successfully explored the world of capital budgeting. You now understand things like NPV, IRR, and how to deal with limited funds, and you've applied this in a practical example. I hope that this short look at finance has helped you make better investment decisions in the future. Remember, the ideas of carefully weighing rewards and risks apply to all important choices in life, not just in money. Whether you're choosing investments or planning your life, always aim for the option that helps you grow the most, whether it's in your finances, your well being, or any other important area of your life. Thank you for joining me. Once again, I'm Naya, and until next time, I hope your decisions bring you success and profit.